Hey guys, it's Pastor Scott Huntley.
And I'm his wife, Mac Huntley. We want to welcome you to Navigation Church. We meet every Sunday at 11 a.m. here at the Centennial Hills Library. So come on out and join us for great community and worship.
Hope to see you there. Starting off our new series, kicking off this week, it's called Made for Me, or Made for More, because I believe we are made for more. I believe that we are actually, that God created us more than just merely surviving or existing, right? You know, that why am I here? Is that I'm just here to take up space, to be some carbon matter that is going to have 60, hopefully 90 years if we're really lucky, and then we go. And I think that we are made for more, and that God created us for more, and He made us for a purpose greater than ourselves. And so over the next 4 weeks, what we're going to do is we're going to go over some of what the a lot of the secular reasoning that they have is like what they focus on, and try and contrast that with what God has in our Bible as for what He created us for. So I think that my hope is that if you're feeling down, if you're feeling tired, that it'll help remind you that you're made for more. We are all made for more. And in fact, it kind of starts off, have you ever felt, or maybe you're currently feeling, that you're just surviving? You know, where it's like when someone asks you, how are you doing? And the real answer is, I'm just trying to get through the day. Okay, and when they're like, hey, do you have a 5-year plan? You're like, dude, I don't have a 5-day plan, okay? You know, I am just surviving. I came across this tweet as well. Do we have it up? Yeah. There's no way I'm working to 65. I don't even know if I'm going to make it to 5 yet. I can feel that. Which, by the way, I actually do like it that now I don't think anyone has a problem seeing the screen from our house. So it's a little bit bigger and whatnot. So there's that. But yes, has anyone ever felt like that? You know, I know. Hopefully not this week, but if you have, you come to the right place. But that's not actually just social media. There's a Gallup recently found that nearly half of all employees say they work primarily for a paycheck and benefits, which I actually found kind of weird, because I thought everyone worked for a paycheck and benefits, but I don't know who is not working for paycheck and benefits. But they found out that only 18% of the people polled said their work gives them a purpose. They personally believe it, 18%. So here's a chart for another Gallup poll that I found up. Okay, so this is for the first time in years, American workers now describe themselves as struggling more than thriving. And I also added another chart because it was given in the same article here. And this is about negative emotions. And here's the interesting part. If you actually look, it's talking about polling people the previous day, not week, not month, not year. How were you feeling the previous day? And you can see that the numbers, there was something that happened in 2020 and 2021 that really messed up both of these charts. I know it's just this really small thing, but here's the crazy part. It's like you can say, yeah, it's COVID. We all know COVID. The numbers have never gone down since. So they've gone down from the peak of COVID, but they haven't gone down to pre-COVID. People are still feeling more angry, more sad, more worried, more struggling than they had before it. And I'd like to submit something to you, that I actually believe that, well, COVID was a massive catalyst, and it was, that I think for many people, life had been moving so fast and so distracting that they never had to actually ask themselves any questions or any of the deep questions until finally we were at home for weeks, months, and for some of us years on end, and then we started to have time to think. And we never stopped to ask the questions like, is life as safe as I once thought it was? You know, what am I building my life around? That was a question. Or why isn't society acting the way I think it should? That seemed to be a big thing on social media. Why are people not acting the way I want them to, or the way I think they should? And many of us now are trying to survive in a post-COVID society that has become like an all-consuming effort, right? And I think that survival actually doesn't look the same as it once did anymore. Like when we used to talk about survival, especially for those of us who play a survival game, you're like, okay, I need my food, I need my water, I need my shelter, and I need my protection, right? But I think that as we've gone, survival seems to keep expanding in many ways. So like I would argue, you know, in some ways, a car is part of survival. Like I work over at Creech Air Force Base, it's 37 miles away, that I tell you I need a car to get over there because I'm not riding my bike 36 miles both ways, okay? I don't know if I could, like maybe once. I have met people that there are crazy people who said, I took my bike up today, and I'm like, good on you. I mean, like, I see what you're doing. I respect you, but it doesn't motivate me to do the same, you know? But yes, like the cars now become Wi-Fi. I mean, if you want to see that Wi-Fi is part of survival, turn off, if you have children or students, turn off your Wi-Fi and see how long it takes for them to say, I'm dying, okay? Life is just not worth living anymore if I can't have my Wi-Fi. The survival has expanded, the definition of survival has expanded, and we've been really good at redefining what it is. In fact, because honestly, that word need seems to come up because it involves something that is necessary, right? That I need it to survive. And I think one of the big questions underlying all of it is all I'm living for my entire life just about surviving? That when it becomes an all-consuming effort, that question seemingly comes up louder and louder because after weeks and months of surviving, you sometimes think, I guess this is just the way my life is from now on. And it's really disheartening to believe that we just eat to live, to eat to live. And I think that that is why Jesus Christ is so necessary, because that is absolutely not what he says. So we're going to look at a few moments where Jesus actually does address this very concern. If you have your Bibles, we'll be looking for Matthew chapter 6, which is the very first book of the New Testament. So we'll be reading starting in verse 25. And if you don't have your Bibles, there's one at the back table. Please feel free to take it, have it. If you want a more personalized Bible, let me know. We've given 3 out of personalized Bibles. We'll have your name engraved because I absolutely believe that having a Bible is very crucial step. And of course, the words will be up on the screen. So we start out in Matthew chapter 6, verse 25, and it says this: Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? And look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or stow away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. And are you not much more valuable than they? And can any one of you worry by adding a single hour to your life? Now, I know that many people have heard this passage, and normally a lot of pastors preach on worrying. And again, because Jesus says, don't worry, don't worry. I actually want to take it from what God is telling us not to worry about. Because if you don't understand survival, then you might not understand why we're worrying. Because why does God tell us not to worry about survival? And I believe it is this: is that survival was never meant to replace our dependence on God. Is that when you focus all on survival, you say, I'm going to focus first, then God sometimes becomes secondary. And here's the interesting part. I want us to understand who God is telling this to, okay? Now, obviously, it's to us in 2026. That's why we're talking about it. But Jesus is talking to people who most of their entire life was about surviving. Okay, this is not like, hey, I'm just going to go to the store and then find what's to eat, or maybe if I'm really lazy and I want to pay like obnoxious prices to Uber Eats and a tip, I'll even get to have it delivered to me. He is talking to people who living and survival was an intricate and important part of their life. Because, they didn't have sliced bread. Okay, there was no saying this is better than sliced bread. They had this is better than when God gave us manna. Okay, it wasn't a very catchy phrase, which I'm glad they actually replaced it. Okay, don't quote me on that and don't look that up on Google. But, okay, just take my word for it. But you know what they had to do to eat bread? Okay, you had to grow wheat. And then you actually had to harvest the wheat, and then you had to separate the wheat. That's where we actually still have the separating the wheat from the chaff. We still have that phrase. And then you had to grind it by hand, or if you were really rich, you had an animal that would go around that circle. We've seen that on the windmill. And then you actually have to into flour. Then you mixed it with water, which you got from a well or a spring. So that was a chore. And then you finally kneaded it and baked it, and then you had bread. And if you didn't know, that is a very, very time-consuming effort. And the worst part is that's why if you had a bad harvest, it wasn't just oh no, wheat prices are going to go up. It is, we're going to starve. Okay? And in the Bible, in the Old Testament, there's many times where they actually say there was a famine in the land and people literally had to move. Their entire families had to move. We had Abraham, when he got to Canaan, they actually said he had to move to Egypt for a famine. Naomi, that you might remember from the book of Ruth, if you hadn't, the whole book of Ruth actually starts out with an entire Jewish family had to go to another country because there was a famine, and then they brought Ruth back. So famine was not something that was like, oh man, my gas prices are going to go up. It was like, are we going to die or move? Okay, so it was like something to really be important, like it was something that they had to actually worry about. And yet Jesus tells them not to worry about it. And so when we think like Jesus just doesn't know, I assure you the people he's talking to know a lot, like are feeling this much more, and probably thought it was a lot more crazy than we do today. And so here's what I think Jesus is trying to expose is not the lack of importance of survival, but that survival absolutely is a necessity, but it shouldn't be your life. Okay, that when Jesus says don't worry about survival, he's not saying, okay, don't even just chill out, God will make that bread for you. Okay, what he's trying to say is that if you make your life all around survival, God is going to become a second and distance, third, fourth, fifth, all the way down. Because as I said, kind of in our definition, when survival kind of expands, I think others, believe, well, once I take care of my needs, then I'll figure out things like church. And here's what happens is that I actually think that it's wise to say. In fact, the Bible talks about, not being a sloth, that we should actually, think of tomorrow. It's wise to say, it's wise to work. Jesus actually doesn't think that we should be anti-work. But what I do think that he is he's saying when your whole life revolves around that, what you're going to find is that God doesn't become part of it. And I think that what happens is that, and I've seen this happen over and over and over again, is that when people say, I'm just going to need to wait until this happens, and then I'll pick up my Bible, then I'll go to church, then I'll do something, that magically what happens is that suddenly some other thing comes in, and some other thing comes in, and some other things come in. And this is why you always have there's never going to be a perfect time. If you're waiting for the perfect time to come to church, I hope to see you in heaven. Okay, because there's never going to be a perfect time, because we can always find something that we absolutely need, whether it's sleep. Oh, sleep is a big one. Sleep is a big one. I need sleep. I was like, when do you work? 7 a.m. Well, church starts at 11. Do you need sleep for your work? I don't know. But what I think is Jesus gives us a different foundation. He gives us a different perspective, because interestingly enough, before Jesus did the Sermon on the Mount, which is where these verses come from, he actually spent 40 days in the desert fasting. So if Jesus knew about survival, I would take it from the guy who went without food and water for 40 days. And here's the interesting part, is that after he does this 40 days, Satan tempts him. And the first temptation he has is about food. I mean, it kind of makes sense. Jesus is probably pretty hungry, and Satan's like, I bet you he's hungry, so why don't you change these stones into bread? Because if you're God, you can do that. And the first thing he tempts him with is food, which I found out, I just want you to know, I looked on, here's an article that I found of how tough it is. A 39-year-old pastor dies after trying to go 40 days. So I will not be doing a 40-day fast at this time, okay? I leave it to the Son of God to be able to do 40 days. I'm trying to do one, okay? So that's how intense it is that people have died trying to replicate what Jesus has done. So I think that Jesus knew a little bit about surviving and food just before this, okay? But yet here's what he says in that temptation. It comes from Matthew 4:4. He says, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. I want to show that he didn't say bread was unnecessary. He didn't say, no, I'm good. He just said it's not the only thing that living is about. That man does not live on bread alone, but on the Word of God. Which kind of leads me to my second point, and that is this, is that survival was never meant to be our purpose. So if you're like, I'm spending my whole life surviving, I want you to know that was not what we were designed to be. God did not design us. He designed us for much, much more. And that is why I think when people think this is all my life is, that's where the depression, loneliness, anxiety, all those things are coming in, because they don't have a function for why they're created and the encouragement of a community to say, dude, we are so much more than just that. If you look at the next, so in the follow-on passage of that, in Matthew chapter 6, 31, 33, it says this, therefore do not be anxious, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the Gentiles seek after these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them all. But seek first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. You know, what actually really stands out to me is that phrase, the Gentiles seek after these things. So you might not know, because most of us read an English Bible. It's really easy. So the word that Jesus uses, so depending on your translation, you might have the Gentiles chase after, the Gentiles run after. That the original Greek that Jesus is saying, that he uses the same word in verse 33, but seek, is that it's a Greek word zeteo. And the word that he uses in the Gentiles seek after actually comes from a conjugated, it comes from epizetosin, and the epi prefix means eagerly. So this is not, so when he's saying that the Gentiles go after, he's actually saying they rush after, they eagerly search after the things to survive. And I know this because when Elon Musk became a billionaire or a trillionaire, everyone seemed to lose their mind. That this guy is having something and he should not have it. And when I say that some people eagerly chase after, I think we all know people in our lives where all they're looking for is a bigger car, bigger house, more food, more relaxation, and they eagerly chase after it, and that's the whole purpose of their life. And so when Jesus says they eagerly search after him, I can just look around and say like, yep, Jesus is right. Absolutely. I think that is also why what we see happening after COVID is that I don't think that the pandemic personally created all the anxiety, but what it did is it exposed it. And so everyone is now realizing they're not in a safe world that they thought they were in, their job is not as secure as they thought they were in, that living paycheck to paycheck is pretty dangerous, and we actually need a society, and we need a community, and we need people that are able to care for one another, and COVID really just exposed that. And that's where I think the church needs to come in and realize, yes, because it's not about the things we have, it's about a community and purpose and meaning, and it's about a relationship with Jesus Christ. And that's where the church comes in. So I think that COVID reminded us that we're actually very much more fragile than we wanted to be. And that many of our hope, at least where I see for many people outside of church, I find that their hope is all in the systems that they can't control, in power that they wish they had. And that's why I think that when they start saying, I will follow God after I get all these things, they end up never having God, never finding that purpose, and never finding that meaning. And here's what I want us to remind, is that God is not the reward after survival. He is our strength in the middle of it. He is our strength in the middle of it. And I want us, and here's the thing, I want us to not fall into a trap that I see happening on all these fallacies where people go from one unhealthy extreme to the next unhealthy extreme, where they're like, okay, I won't worry about survival, I'll just let God handle it. Like, I'll just sit on the couch. Is that, because I see this, all the ideas that if I'm not going to take responsibility for it, God has to take responsibility for it, and that is not what Jesus is saying. It's just like, it's not about you, it's about God. What he's saying is that if you, I'll give you an example, okay? I have some people come to me and they say, my wife says, or my spouse says that I'm too clean, okay? The solution is not, we'll abandon them, okay? So if they're too clean, the idea is spend zero time with them. That'll teach them, right? Okay? The obvious answer, could we at least admit that going from that extreme to the next is not the solution? The right answer is, okay, well, let's have safe boundaries, right? And so the idea of not worrying about survival is not worrying about the idea of survival. It's about focusing on a dependence and reliance on God in the middle of survival. That's what it's about. Because I would say this, has anyone seen the show Survivor? I think we have it out. Has anyone seen the show Survivor? I mean, it's been going on for 50 seasons and 26 years. So chances are you've seen at least one episode, right? And if you haven't seen the episode, you should at least know what it's about, right? Okay, and what's interesting that I found is that the first couple of seasons were actually about surviving, where it's like, how do you build a tent? How do you have water, like water distilling? Like, how do you actually get food? And then we found out that's really boring, okay? And so what happened is that like we got it, and if you actually look at how the seasons and the show commenced, they were actually about surviving, but it wasn't about water anymore. It was about this, okay? Surviving the tribal council. Because what we found out was we don't really care about people building a tent. What we really like is drama and relationships. It's like we want those alliances, we want those backstabs, we want that juicy gossip as they see the camera and like, Fred, sorry, You took my fish that one time. I hate you for life now. You're out. Okay? That's what we want. That all of a sudden the surviving was less about food, water, shelter, and more about relationships. And you know what? Life is kind of like that too. That interestingly, the show couldn't have viewers when it was just about food, water, and shelter, but it could get a lot more viewers when it was about relationships. And you know what? I agree with them. Because life is a lot more exciting with relationships. Now, I don't want to have a tribal council here. I don't ever plan on it, okay? Maybe as a spin-off, okay? But there are relationships that I do want to build. And it's not about getting people out, it's about getting people in. Absolutely. In fact, I want the tribal council to be so much, you have to have another tribal council. That'd be great. But I want to begin my final point with this. And it comes from a scene from the movie WALL-E. So I know that yes, so a lot of the younger kids have seen it, a lot of the younger adults have seen it from the smiles. And so WALL-E is about a robot called WALL-E. That's where the movie gets its name from. And if you haven't seen it, spoilers are ahead, okay? I think it's a 10-year-old. It's a 13-year-old movie. You've had your time, okay? And, you know, sorry. So the whole movie, the A plot is effectively about WALL-E, where the movie gets its name from, and he meets this amazing robot named Eve, and Eve is on a mission to try to see if there's life on Earth. And of course, WALL-E he finds this, and it's kind of the cuteness of he's really a male robot, and she's a cute female robot, and so it's like the interpersonal series of robots. And then they get onto the ship because Eve has to go back because they find life. And so they go back to the ship, and much of it is trying to get this plant to the ship's captain. And so in the very final scene, that is the climax of it, the captain actually finds the plant, and then he puts it in, and now it's like, we've got to go back, and he finds a conflict with the robot AI. And the AI says, we're not going back. We're not going back. And he has this fight with him, and he says, we have to go back. And what I want you to see is how survival is at the key of this fight.
Life is sustainable now. Look at this plant. Green and growing. It's living proof he was wrong.
Irrelevant, Captain.
What? It's completely relevant. Out there is our home. Home auto, and it's in trouble. I can't just sit here and do nothing. That's all I've ever done. That's all anyone on this plastic ship has ever done. Nothing.
On the axiom, you will survive.
I don't want to survive. I want to live.
Must follow.
Isn't it interesting? I don't want to survive. I want to live. Which I think is very obvious, as we all know. I mean, it's so obvious even Hollywood could discover it, okay? But that's why that scene touches us, is that I don't want to survive. I want to live. That there's something about being alive that is more than just survival. And absolutely, they're right. And the Bible tells us that this longing isn't actually accidental. Okay? It actually goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden. Most people in Genesis don't realize that when God puts Adam in the garden the very first time, he actually tells him to go work. He says, you're going to take care of the garden. So it wasn't about survival. He said, here's all the plants, all the food you could ever want, all the surviving. I have your protection. I'm going to watch over you. I'm going to make sure nothing really eats you. In fact, I'm going to put you over all the animals. But you still have to take care of it. So it wasn't anything about survival. That in the Garden of Eden, the biggest thing was a relationship with God. That when sin entered the world, everything changed from that dynamic. That God tells Adam, if you actually look, when he actually tells him this is what's going to happen, is that he says that the ground is not going to produce thistles and thorns because of you. People are like, I have to work. Actually, there was work even before sin. And now there's a lot more work after sin, unfortunately. But really what happened was the biggest change was not work. It was humanity's fractured relationship with God and in turn creation itself. And we kind of see that. A lot of people actually say, like, did God create this? Did God create these creatures that just have sharp teeth? You see what happens if you ever have those pictures of the deep blue sea and you're just like, did God create that? I was like, I hope not. Well, I mean, like, he has to because it's part of his creation. But I was like, but I'm not going to go down in Mariana Trench to find out. We're sending the cameras, not the humans, which is good. But I think that a lot of people struggle with survival. They do. I ran across a few posts, so something to get us to laugh. Here's one of them. Say it up. How did jobs work before email? Like, did you just get home from work and work was over? Yes, Michaela, that is what happened. I did get home from work and it was done. I'm sorry. Here's the next one that you have. Millennial dating. Hey, what you doing Wednesday? Working to survive. What are you doing Saturday? Being tired from working to survive, and then laundry. Nice. Okay? I don't know what is nice about that, but I can relate, right? That is, you know what? But I think that what both those people need is church. And I'm not being hyperbolic. Is that I really think they need something in their life of a community that actually tells them there's more to life than survival and laundry. Okay? Because what they don't realize is that after laundry there actually comes folding, which I think is actually worse. Okay? So, sorry gentlemen, there's actually one more step you're probably going to hate even more afterwards. Okay? But I absolutely think that that is what people are struggling with, and they need a community that tells them that there's something more. And here's what I want to say is that Jesus came to restore the purpose that sin stole from humanity. That the relationship, that it wasn't about surviving, it was about a relationship. And when sin came in, it broke that, and now we had to go one step back and effectively say, okay, now you need to survive. I kind of want to just finish up quickly with this one point before we get to application, is I ran across this that I want to say, a lot of times people are like, where's God in my life? Why can't I have God? And I think that God does work directly in our lives. He has, certainly can, certainly does. But I also want to say this, is that God oftentimes works in the people of the church for other people. That it's not, that when everyone says, what is God doing in my life? What I actually ask is, what are the people around you doing in your life? And if the answer is, well, I was invited out, but I didn't want to go. Like, fair enough, we've all been there, by the way, okay? We all want to be invited, but we don't want to go because we have really a stacked night of Oreo eating and Netflix watching, okay? What amazes me is that oftentimes people will say, like, well, where's God? And my answer is, well, where's God's people? And that sometimes is the way God works in our life. I found this story, bless you, about the world's first food bank. Here's a picture. Do you have a picture of it? This is a picture of the first food bank, created in 1967. It was created by a gentleman. Because I want to get his name right. John von Hengel. Okay, John von Hengel, and he had been volunteering at a soup kitchen. And a woman came up to him and said that she needed the soup kitchen because it was the only way between a soup kitchen and dumpster diving from the local grocery stores that she fed her family. And he was so moved, he went to his church, which was St. Mary's Basilica in downtown Phoenix, and they gave him $3,000 in an abandoned building, and they said, you need to go make this happen. And that was the first food bank, which is St. Mary's Food Bank, that he created in honor of the church that gave him the means and necessary. And let me tell you, so the church was there, but it took a man of the church to now have it. And he now has national organizations of America's Second Harvest, which is known today as Feeding America. So if you've ever heard that, that was started by a man who was in a church in 1967 that said, I see a fix, and I'm going to do it for God. That is God in action through his people. And I think that is why we're also here, is because God can absolutely work directly in people's lives, and he needs us to do it as well. So I want to close up with just a few questions of application. I'll ask the praise team to come up. Here's my first question. I just wanted to think of for the day. Has your pursuit of survival slowly replaced your pursuit of God? Because I think, and I understand where we've all been in that season. If you haven't, you're lucky because you're going to have it. Where it's like day after day turns into week after week, turns into, unfortunately, maybe month after month. And you blink and you're just trying to survive, and it thinks like, where's God? Where's friends? Where's all that? And I don't think that people, especially who need God in their life, wake up a day and say, now God, I don't need you. Is that we just end up waking up and saying, man, I've just kind of slid. And if that's part of you, if that's happening in your life, I want to know what we can do to help stop that slide. What we can do in your life as a church to let you know that God is still present and wants to be present in your life. Number 2, what part of your life has become routine that you wish God would fill with purpose? Let me tell you, you know what the worst part is? You ever heard of the rat race? You know that term? It used to be a more popular term, and it's the idea that you just wake up, go to work, go home, wake up, go to work, go home. And people were just in this rat race that they could never get out of. And I think the worst part that I've seen people do is be in a job that pays the bills and has no purpose. And I see people that are trapped because they're effectively saying, I die every day I go to work, but it's the only thing that can keep the lights on. And they feel absolutely trapped in a fulfillless, like no fulfillment, no purpose, but it's what they're doing to survive. And if that's you, I want you to know that there is purpose, and there are people outside of your job who want to be with you, who want to help fill through God purpose in your life. And here's the last thing. How can God use you this week to become part of his provision in someone else's life? I think part of the reason why so many people, so many Gentiles, non-Christians, that they chase after the things of the world is what they're trying to do in many ways is they're trying to take away all the uncertainty of the world. Is they're effectively saying, you know, if I'm just rich enough, I can handle any crisis, any downturn, any issue, and I can throw enough money at it that I will be safe and secure. And what we actually found out from COVID is that most people can spend their entire life trying to build that amount of money and never get there. And in fact, that's what is caused a consternation with so many people. They effectively say, I don't have the statistics with me, but I heard one guy that said, I sold a $6 million job and I still have to go to work because I found out $6 million is not enough to have the life I want for the rest of my life. And I'm like, if everyone in this world is trying to find $6 million, then we are all in very big trouble. And that's why I think he says that people who are without God are chasing after a security that they might never, ever get, and they will spend their whole life chasing. That's why I think that he says, but those who put their faith in God realize that there are things I cannot control, but God can. There are crises I'm going to have to face, and God will be there with me. That is why I think it's so important. And here's the thing, is that God, I believe, takes care of us so we can see those people who desperately need him and help them as well. I've said it over and over again, there are all these people who say, where's God, where is God? And my answer is, he is right here, and I'm bringing him to you. That that you might not see God's love, but maybe I can show you love, and you can see God's love through me, and I absolutely believe that that's how he works. This last week, I'll just end with this. We had missionaries, 15 missionaries over our house. And and what's amazing is that we have all these missionaries that are going out onto Fremont Street, onto the Strip, trying to save God. And the amazing thing is that we have churches in Las Vegas, and missionaries say we need more help in Las Vegas. And I couldn't agree with them more. And the thing is that God has blessed me to give them a house and provisions to help them help our community. And we're partnering with them within Every Heart. It's called the Every Heart Movement, and they came from Michigan. They've done a whole 60-day mission trip through the United States, and we're the end stop before they head on back. So we're the furthest west they go, and we're partnering with them. So every year they can come in and help us, and we're now a church that has partnered with churches around the world and around the nation. And that is because of the things that we are doing and what God is doing through us. And I just want to say thank you so much that for being the church that has a nationwide impact and a worldwide impact. Thank you for being that, for your prayers, for your sacrifice, in giving, in time, in effort, and everything else. Thank you for being that church, because it is a testament to Jesus Christ that he can use us for his good purpose. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I just thank you. I thank you that not that the world is hard, that the world is hard and you're helping us overcome the obstacles. Lord, I just pray that for those in this room that are struggling with survival, that they at least made it here. That for those who are watching online, that they at least clicked a link. Lord, that they are searching for you, that I ask that you will help honor that sacrifice, help honor that intention, and be with them, not only in their lives, but help them be with other people who desperately need you as well. Lord, I thank you for being with us in the struggle, and I ask that you help us through these challenges and help Navigation Church be a beacon in this community that goes out and rescues them and shows them who the true navigator is in their lives. I thank you, Lord, for all that you do. In your name I pray. Amen.